So yeah, coffee cherry comes into the front gate there. Trucks are inspected. They're looking for any cross-contamination, but anything on board the truck, like pesticide or chemicals, anything like that, because it's a USDA organic facility.
Cool.
EU. And so then the coffee cherry truck is past the security, comes back over here, backs in, and then all the coffee cherry is transported in these crates and is actually weighed. So we document how much cherry is coming in from each of the farms, and we actually also toll service, so we toll process for a large cherry buyer in the north of Thailand. But after that, the cherries are brought in and dumped into or loaded into the cherry pit. So a lot of coffee production around the world, with the exception of places like Brazil, Laos, and some other ones, a lot of coffee production and processing is done on hills, right? So you have gravity. So you bring in, truck comes in, brings the cherry, and you float it down, and you have gravity. So we don't have gravity here because we're in flat land, so we use elevators to support gravity.
Right.
Cherries are loaded in the loading pit, come up, enter the washer and separator. So if you step up here.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything quite like that. It's pretty fun.
So if you step up here, you can see this is the first stage or channel of the washer separator. This is separating any sticks and stones, not stones, but sticks and leaves and debris.
All the lightweight stuff that floats,
Exactly, and then the cherries fall down and make their way into this first channel here. Really, really heavy sinking stuff is going to fall down, and it's going to actually come out here. So this whole thing is filled with water, and it's recycling the water, and it's using siphonic. So it's the heavy stones immediately sink, then they come out here, make their way out, we can bag them. The cherry sinkers, which are the quality cherries, are going to fall down here, and they're actually going to come up out here, sort of separated. The floating cherries continue on past those drop-off channels and float all the way out here. So we've got our floaters coming out on the left side, and we've got our sinkers out on the right.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So
now you got
really
some little baby coffee plants growing over there.
Yeah.
In the corner, just for funsies.
Really selective picking here in Thailand. So we're using Brazilian equipment, which is meant for mechanical harvesting, less selective picking. But we're using it here, so it's
even more.
It's just it's just
another layer of protection. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So making our way up to the pulper. So, if you want to, you actually probably you can climb up there. I'll point to it.
Right.
So the first thing you see there at the top where the cherry is coming in is a screen pulper.
Right.
So I took the cover off so you can see inside. Cherry makes its way down in there, and then this screen pulper is actually pressing cherries, ripe cherries, which are soft, are going to press through that screen, you see, and unripe cherries that are large, green ones, are actually going to go out the pipe out there, and there's a threshold that can set a weight, a damper on there, and it will let more or less green cherries out. So this screen pulper here, like, sort of pre-pulps the coffee.
Right.
It sort of makes the parchment loose inside the skin, and then this is vertical pulper, and when the cherry comes through there, it's basically just ripping that skin away from the mucilage covered parchment so that it can go in through the rotary screen.
Yeah. Those things are sweet. Yeah, that is the real deal.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the invention of the vertical pulper is kind of, here, I can grab that for you. It's like So the invention of the vertical pulpers, kind of funny. They have the regular horizontal pulpers, and it only uses about, like, I don't know, 25–50% of the surface area of the blade. And a guy wanted to make it more efficient, so he basically just took a horizontal pulper and flipped it on its side. That's how the vertical pulper was invented, essentially. So you get the full surface area.
There you go.
But they use that screen pulper to sort of pre-pulp it, so really the vertical pulper is just removing the skin.
Right.
Through the rotary screen, which separates unripes that didn't pulp and then parchment. So the little screen, the oblong screen, the parchment goes down into the bottom auger and then comes out here. These are into the fermentation tanks where we do dry and wet fermentation.
And these are all metal too.
Stainless steel,
That's
yeah.
pretty serious.
So
Usually it's like concrete, or maybe they're tiled or something like that, but it's kind of rare to see.
yeah, the problem with the
metal
tile is not the tile, but it's usually the grout.
Exactly.
It
All the
collects
stuff,
a lot of
mold
so.
and everything else.
Have you ever heard of like when people are doing sourdough, they use a starter? Like they take a little bit from the other sourdough and they store it, and then
Yeah.
that starts it in the next one. So you can do that in like wine fermentation. You can do that in coffee fermentation, but it takes 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks, you know, with all drying, pulping, everything included, before we can cut the results.
Right.
So it would not really be ideal to use a starter in coffee, unless you knew for sure that starter
Do you
was
guys
gonna be-
do like added fruit yeast, or do you just
We've
use naturally
experimented,
occurring
yeah, but
yeast?
we're using naturally here, yeah.
Huh? Yeah, it'd be fun to try, because
Yeah.
fruit yeast is kind of the main thing
There's the
everybody's kind of
Lalo
going to.
Cafe yeast, which is
Yeah.
a pretty popular one.
And they're using like beer yeast
Yep.
for some experiments in China too, just to see
Yeah.
what that would do.
So yeah, into the fermentation tanks, we do our wet fermentation there. One of our clients, they do a Kenyan style, they call it, but it's basically we ferment for 24 hours, flush the water out, ferment again for 24 hours, flush the water out, soak for 24 hours, because there's literally no mucilage left.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it leaches flavor and it loses a lot of body and acidity by doing that, because you
Yeah.
build the acidity through fermentation and then you lose it when you soak it.
Even in Burundi, they've been talking about how they're trying to get them to stop wasting so much water because of that too, and just kind of walk that back and just do a single fermentation and
Yeah.
get away from the double wash. They weren't doing triples, but just for double wash.
Yeah.
so kinda
Yeah, it's
crazy.
true, and I mean, you can also, you don't have to do double washed with water. You can do a dry fermentation first, and then wet fermentation. Because wet fermentation is a little bit more anaerobic, so it's a little bit more
Right.
because it's sort of sealed and homogenized. With dry fermentation, it's more open using ambient air. And
Right. Well, one of the experiments they were doing in China with Wei Hong was a double natural, essentially. So they were doing anaerobic, cherries, just natural cherries in bags, and putting those
Yeah.
in warehouses,
Yep.
and then leaving them outside in the sun and drying them out that way. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So we're
Yeah.
gonna try one of those when we
Nice.
get back. Yeah.
So honeys will go out here, we'll dodge the fermentation, takes
Right.
it all together, and then send it out on
Yeah.
this shaker table. Gets rid of a little extra water and moisture out of there, and then take it straight to the tables. Or we actually do a cold honey process, which we do actually a dry fermentation first in the crates, and then for about like 8 to 12 hours, and then we seal it in bags, and vacuum it, and we put it in the cold room.
Huh.
So this is the cold room.
That's pretty fun.
So, also have the mucilager. Again, mucilage remover. So, if you want to bypass fermentation, or you want to do a partial fermentation but you still have mucilage on the parchment, send it through, it goes to the mechanical mucilage remover. And basically the way, it's sort of cheese grating the coffee mucilage away. So basically you control the flow of input flow, control the output, and basically the more time it spends, and also you've got water adjustment here. So if you increase the pressure of the water at the top, decrease the pressure of the water at the bottom, you'll slow it down exiting. So adjusting these is very important depending on the volume you have going in. But anyway, the longer time it spends in the chamber, the more mucilage is coming off, and actually you can risk damaging the coffee really bad.
Seriously.
But if it's properly used, you can actually get really, really good results without damaging any of the parchment.
Yeah. These things all look like relatively new. How old is the equipment?
This season was the first.
I was going to say, it looks barely broken in, man.
Yeah. Yeah, barely broken in. I want to say we did about 200 tons of cherry through here.
Man.
But, I mean, our capacity is definitely closer to about 1,000.
Yeah.
Solar house, real hot. Some Caspar in there. That's drying. We got like a natural one. Yeah. That's just some mixed maturity left over. So these are the old houses. These are the new houses. We changed the construction a little bit.
Yeah.
It's much faster than rolling it up.
Right?
So, oh, that one doesn't open. This one does. Well, anyway.
It's latched at the bottom,
Yeah, that's okay.
We get it.
So, the idea here is to open it up during the day, let the air flow through.
Right.
Today's much hotter than it actually is during the real bulk of the harvest, but because we're getting into the hot season.
Right.
But basically, what happens is at about 4 o'clock, we were closing at about 5:30, and then I had to change it to about 4:30 for closing the house down, because as soon as the sun starts to go down behind the Doi, the mountain, the temperature all day, the humidity is rising, and the temperature is rising, of course. And then basically, as soon as the sun goes behind, the temperature plummets and the relative humidity spikes up to about 100%. Basically, that space of air cannot hold the water moisture anymore. So you hit the dew point, and so you can get a lot of mold and fungus. So we trap the environment, turn the fans on, keep the moisture, or keep the air moving, and keep the moisture wicking away from the coffee. Right. So yeah, the fans are just meant to circulate the air.
Yeah. We have very similar issues, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. I came out here, I think it was December or early January. I came out here and there was a lot out there on the table, and it was like the mucilage was dripping through the nets. And I was like, what is this? Right. And I felt it, and it was like, sticky because the mucilage was all runny, and the parchment is gritty. And when it's gritty, that means the mucilage has severed, the layer has severed from attachment to the parchment. Yeah. And I asked them, I was like, what process are you guys doing out there? You're doing some experiment? And they're like, no, that's production. That's the honey process. And I was like, no, that's not a honey process.
That's not good.
That's not a good thing. Oh, it's a dry fermentation. The dry fermentation happened on the drying bed.
Right.
So